Let me show you what this looks like to grade it. So I can get to the grading tool, which is called SpeedGrader, from here, from the kebab selector up there at the top. But normally the way I'll get there is from my to-do list. So I want to show you on my home page that here is my to-do list. 15 of you guys turned that in, so I'm going to click there, and that's going to open up the SpeedGrader for me. So you'll use the SpeedGrader to grade anything that's been submitted online into Canvas. And just as we're getting used to what these tools do, I'm going to show you first here that you have some settings inside of the SpeedGrader. And you can sort your student list by the day they submitted it, by student name, or by which ones need grading versus not submitted. So I like the date they submitted it. You can hide the grades, the student names, not the grades, student names in the SpeedGrader if you want to, and you can pick on a case-by-case basis if you want to do that. Otherwise, the way it's going to show up for you is I can see up here that I have 0 out of 22 that I've graded yet, haven't done any grading. Margaret's is going to be first. She must have submitted it first. And I can pull down on this arrow right there, and I can see all the other students and that they are waiting to be graded. That's what that orange dot is right there, that it's been turned in and waiting to be graded. Anyone who's grayed out, they have not turned it in. Now, how do we use the SpeedGrader? The student submission will always show up on your left-hand side. So I can see her response over there, and then my grade goes over here. So this one's out of 5 points. I can go ahead and put 5 in there. As soon as I click out of that box, that grade's now in my Canvas grade book. And then I can give her some assignment comments. And I can give her comments down there. This paperclip means I could send back a document to her. I could also give her a media comment, so I could give her audio or video feedback if I wanted to. And then if you're working in Chrome, you're going to see this tool. This is speech to text. So you could record your comments, and Canvas does a pretty good job of capturing them and then putting those, it'll translate it to text for you and put it in your comment box. It's only in Chrome that you'll see that. So I'm going to go ahead and click Submit. Okay, and notice that my comments and Margaret's are going to show there in that window. Our feedback system in SpeedGrader is built so that it is a loop, so that students can reply to me. So when students get their feedback, they will see a space where they can reply. And no, there's not a way we can turn it off. It's how it was built. So now that Margaret's is done, I can it's going to show hers as a green check mark. And then I can go to the next student is Jonathan's. And then I can see his response in there. And he did have that GIF in there, or GIF, whichever, like I said, whichever side of the fence you're on. And then you can just work your way through. As you're doing that, it's keeping some statistics for you at the top. It's going to show you how many you've graded so far, and then what the average score is. So this one's got 100%. Now, from the SpeedGrader, if you wanted to go to the gradebook, it's this icon right here, the one with the little, it looks like an old school gradebook with a check mark on it. This is that mute or unmute. This is if you need help, and this has their settings in it. And a lot of people are like, how do I get back to my course out of the SpeedGrader? Well, there's a little link right there. It's going to be the name of your class. So I'm going to click right there, and that's going to take me back into my course. All right, so we're going to build a discussion. So if you want to go into the course where you were building today, and I'm going to go in here to where I was building, you've got a placeholder to make your discussion. So here's my discussion. Mine's called Talk About Pandas. So I'm going to click on that. And right now it's just a placeholder. So I'm going to go ahead and click Edit so that I can get to my Rich Content Editor tool. And we'll take a look at the different options that you have when you're building a discussion. So obviously in this box up here is where we would create the discussion, what we want our students to see. So I'm going to ask my students to tell me 3 facts you know about pandas. and I'm going to ask them to respond to one of your classmates. So you can add attachments in here if you would need to, but remember, because this is your regular rich content editor, you could put anything in here. This could be a video, this could be a PowerPoint that you want them to look at, an article that you want them to read. You really have a lot of flexibility in when you're building it. But let's take a look at the options down below. The first one is allow for threaded replies. You would use this if you do want students to be able to respond to one another. If you don't use that, if you don't check that, then they're only going to be able to reply to you, and they aren't going to be able to reply to one another. The next option in there is users must post before seeing replies. I see a lot of heads nodding, so you understand what that one means. So until they post, they're not going to see that there's a discussion going on. You can enable a podcast feed. And just like we talked about with announcements, that's there because this doesn't necessarily have to be a text discussion. This could be an audio discussion where you're asking students to post an audio file or a video because they're going to have the record upload media tool, or if they were using the mobile app, they're going to be able to use the video camera or the microphone on their phone to respond. So that's one of the reasons why you're seeing that enable a podcast feed. But just a reminder that this doesn't have to be text. I've seen some really interesting things done with the discussion tool where students are posting artwork or video, and then their other students are critiquing them. If you want it to be graded, you would select the graded box. I do want you to select that right now just so you can see the other options that open up when it is graded. And you can allow for liking. Remember, you're just going to get a thumbs up, not a thumbs down. You can have it be so that only graders can like, so you are the TA. How I've seen that used is some instructors, even though they aren't grading it yet, they'll hit the thumbs up to let the student know I've seen it. Like, I've seen it and I'm working on it. And you can also sort by likes, which means the ones that get the most likes are going to be the posts that are at the top. So just some things that you can do in there. Okay, group discussion. There is the idea of a group discussion. I can, from here, let's say I have one question, but I want students to respond in groups so that they can only see each other's posts. So I could give that group a name from here and say, discussion. I could call this discussion groups. Maybe every time my students respond, they're always responding in the same discussion group. And you can either create those groups yourself or do my favorite thing, which is tell Canvas just to randomly create them. So split your students into however many groups you want and click Save, and it'll just create those groups for you. So you only have to make one post, but when students go in, they'll only see the responses from their group members. You still can see them all, but they can only see the ones that are in their groups. And we're going to talk a little bit more about groups and group projects in a minute when we look at assignments. Points possible. The group yesterday, I think someone could have just hugged me when I told them this. So I hope that your same reaction happens. What we're doing here when we say the point value, and we are building our gradebook from here. You will never have to, in your Canvas gradebook, add columns in. As we are creating these graded assignments, it's making those columns in your gradebook for you. So when it's asking you how many points is possible, and you give it that number, it's talking to your Canvas gradebook and it's making you that column. So I'm going to say for this, it's 10 points. And then no matter what you put for point value, you can say how you want students to see it when they get their feedback back from you. So do you want them to see that as points? Do you want them to see it as a percentage? Do you want them to see it complete or incomplete? You get to decide. No matter what you say here, it's still going to go in your grade book as points.
Where do you set up?
This assignment group here, this is also talking about calculating your grades. So if you use weighted grades, that's why it's asking you which assignment group do you want this to go into. So how many of you use a weighted grading system? No? Like where discussions are worth so much of your course and assignments are, so when it's asking you for the assignment group, that's what it's asking for those people who might keep a weighted grade book. So you can either have that built already or you can create it here, and it's going to organize it for you. We'll be looking at that today when we look at the overall grade book and how that happens. You can require peer reviews for discussions and for assignments. If I wanted to require peer reviews, it's going to ask you how do you want to assign them? Do you want to manually assign them where you're going to get a panel where you match students up, or do you want Canvas to automatically assign them? In that case, you can say, you know, everyone gets 2, and you can either leave this blank or give it a date. Normally you leave it a blank so that after it's due, they're automatically going to get farmed out to students. The next time they log in, it'll show up on their to-do list. And it'll say, you've got, you know, these 2 posts to review from your classmates. If you have a rubric, they use the exact same rubric as you use, and they get a grading interface that looks a lot like the speed grader, so they can give their classmates feedback. Down here is the Assign To box. And it's always going to default to everyone. So that's where you're going to start out. And this is where you give it a due date. So you can pick on the calendar there what day you want this to be due. So I could maybe say Friday. And the default time of day is going to be 11:59. So if you don't put anything in there, it's just going to default to 11:59. But you can put... I'm just making you happy all over the place, huh? That's good. But or you could put in a different time of day. It's up to you. You don't have to use these boxes right here. This is available from and until, but they're going to control student access to it. So if I didn't want students to be able to participate on this until tomorrow, I could set that up in here. Now, the until box is going to remove the student's ability to participate. They're still going to be able to see it, but they're not going to be able to, the reply button is going to go away. So if you do want these to shut down at a certain point, or you don't accept late work, for example, then you can make your due and your until be the same date. Or let's say I do accept late work, I'll let students respond until Monday. If work comes in between the due and the until date, it's going to timestamp it as late. It'll be in red when I look at it in the speed grader. And then it'll also turn the cell in my grade book a different color to let me know that it's been turned in late. So I'll get a lot of visual cues. But then after that, you see this plus add button. So maybe there's someone in my course who they get a differentiated due date. Like every time I do a discussion, they get an extra day. So I'm going to be able to type that student's name or a group of students' names in there, give them their very own due date. So they're never going to see this date up here. They're going to see their own. So they don't even know it's any different from anyone else. And then where this used to say everyone, it'll now say everyone else. You can do that as many times as you need to so that you can differentiate the access to different items in your class depending on what accommodations students might have, or if someone was out sick and they get extended time, or maybe I did have it shut down, but then someone very tearfully came to me and said they were sorry, so I could be like, all right, Erin, you get an extra 2 days. And I don't have to change it for everybody else. I can just give her her own due date. It also works that if the only person I assigned it to was Erin, she is the only person who would see it. So we can use it for differentiated due dates, but you can also use it for differentiation. So if you've got certain things in your course that you only need some students to see, then you would just take away everyone and type their names in there, and they're the only people who would see it. For everyone else, it gets excluded from the grade book. Any questions on that? All right, when you get down to the bottom, you see cancel. Don't do that, it makes it go away. Save and publish. If it's a live course with live students, it'll be available to them right away. Or you can just click save, which you're safe to just go ahead and click save. Discussions will look to you the way they will look to students. It'll give you a lot of information about whether or not it's graded. Mine is locked till March 14th because I said that was the first day students could work on it. If you want to add a rubric to a discussion, where you do that is in these 3 dots right here. You'll see the add rubric interface. We're actually going to build the rubric with assignments, but I just want you to know where it lives in discussions is in a little bit of a different spot. It's in those 3 dots right there.